Did you realize that the morning regimen you have stuck to for decades might be subtly increasing your susceptibility to a stroke? Most seniors in America never anticipate it because they imagine strokes hitting unexpectedly like a bolt from the blue. However, after spending years analyzing the aging brain, I can assure you that the initial warning signs do not begin in a hospital room. They actually originate in your bedroom, your kitchen, and your bathroom during that very first hour after you awaken. This is because, after the age of 60, your brain starts the morning in its most delicate and vulnerable condition. Your blood is more viscous, your pressure is escalating, your vessels are more rigid, and specific routine habits can significantly amplify your stroke risk before you even brew your morning coffee. In this presentation, I will uncover the concealed morning triggers that most seniors fail to identify until the damage is already done. I will also share straightforward adjustments that could safeguard your brain health for many years ahead. Before we proceed, if you are not yet a subscriber, I suggest you click that notification button so you never miss another health insight designed specifically for you. If you find value in this video, please type the number 1 in the comments, or type 0 if you want to help me improve my content for you. When consulting with my older patients across the United States, I frequently start with a query that appears quite innocent. I ask them what the very first substance is that they introduce to their bodies at the start of each day. Most of them smile and reply with pride that they have had their coffee first thing for over 40 years. Yet, speaking as a specialist in brain health, I must inform you that this common American ritual is a significantly overlooked factor in morning blood pressure spikes for those over 60. The reason is that during the night, your body undergoes a prolonged and continuous period without any fluid intake, typically lasting 6 to 8 hours. As we grow older, the body loses its capacity to hold onto moisture effectively, meaning older adults naturally wake up in a state of mild dehydration. This condition goes beyond simple thirst because, in medical terms, nighttime dehydration leads to an increase in blood viscosity. Consequently, the blood becomes thicker and heavier, forcing the heart to work much harder to maintain the smooth flow your brain relies on every second. Now, visualize what occurs when this already concentrated blood interacts with your morning cup of coffee. Caffeine, particularly when consumed on an empty stomach, acts as a diuretic and draws even more water out of your system, exacerbating the dehydration you woke up with. Simultaneously, caffeine activates the sympathetic nervous system, triggering your fight-or-flight response and causing a rapid increase in heart rate and blood pressure moments after waking. For a fit 30-year-old, that surge might be manageable. But for someone over 60 with stiffer arteries and narrower vessels, the combination is precarious. This creates a scenario where blood pressure naturally rises, and when you add dehydration plus caffeine, you generate a spike capable of stressing delicate brain vessels. Thick and concentrated blood is more prone to clotting, and when caffeine further constricts the blood vessels, the risk increases. The narrowing of vessels raises the probability that a clot could become trapped, which in the brain results in an ischemic stroke. It creates a reduction in early morning blood flow to the brain, worsening the natural morning dip in cerebral perfusion that older adults already experience. Commencing the day with a stimulant instead of hydration intensifies that deficit, depriving brain cells of oxygen when they are most susceptible. I recall a case involving an 82-year-old patient from Arizona who had no major medical issues and walked daily, but started having hand clumsiness at breakfast. His medical imaging later revealed he had experienced small, silent, transient ischemic attacks, which are minor strokes occurring shortly after he woke up. His only unvarying habit was drinking strong black coffee every morning before consuming a single drop of water. When we adjusted that routine to prioritize water first and coffee 20 to 30 minutes later, those concerning episodes ceased entirely. This advice is not about abandoning coffee, but rather about managing the timing to ensure your brain receives circulation and hydration before stimulation. If this single straightforward habit can silently nudge a healthy older adult toward a medical crisis, you must ask yourself what other behaviors are increasing your risk. The next habit on this list is even more prevalent in our daily lives, yet is discussed far less frequently. If you are still watching and finding these medical insights useful, please comment with the number 1 below to show you are following along. Now let us proceed to point number 2, which involves sitting for too long on the edge of the bed or without initiating movement. Among my older patients here in the United States, this is a routine behavior they almost never consider as being potentially problematic. They wake up, push themselves into an upright position, sit on the edge of the bed, and remain there for anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. It feels gentle and harmless, but medically speaking, for adults over 60, this prolonged stillness is far from benign. In reality, it establishes a subtle early morning condition that can impede circulation and encourage the pooling of blood before you take your first steps. Allow me to clarify why this happens, starting with the fact that when you sleep, blood flow slows down and naturally pools in the lower body. As we age, the veins in our legs lose their elasticity, the valves weaken, and overall circulation becomes significantly more sluggish. Therefore, when an older adult wakes up and sits without moving, the blood that pooled during the night continues to stagnate in the legs rather than returning to the heart. This creates a dangerous moment where your heart attempts to restore circulation after hours of lying down. But your stillness hinders that necessary upward flow. The outcome is a sudden mismatch involving slow-moving blood in the legs, while your brain is desperately awaiting oxygen and nutrients after a long night. That sensation is not merely morning grogginess, but rather a sign of under-circulation, which is exactly where the genuine physiological danger begins to develop. When blood remains trapped in the legs and fails to reach the brain efficiently, your blood pressure may spike as the heart strains to compensate. This sharp rise in pressure, which is especially common in older adults, can stress fragile vessels in the brain or exacerbate a pre-existing blockage. Stagnant morning blood creates an environment conducive to clot formation, and if a clot forms in the deep leg veins, a sudden movement could dislodge it. If that clot travels upward to the brain, it has the potential to block a vessel instantly and cause a serious ischemic stroke. Sitting still prevents the natural pump action of the calf muscles, which is the very mechanism your body relies on to push blood upward. Without that muscle pump, older adults experience some of the lowest cerebral blood flow levels of the entire day, precisely when the brain is most fragile. I once treated a 79-year-old man from Ohio who believed he was suffering from balance issues because he felt a strange fog every morning. He described his hands trembling slightly and a moment of drifting vision whenever he finally rose from the bed, assuming it was just age. However, what stood out to me was his routine of sitting on the edge of the bed for 25 minutes, checking news on his phone. His scans later revealed microclots in the small vessels of the brain, which were tiny, silent injuries caused by poor circulation during that morning transition. When he reduced his sitting time and incorporated gentle ankle rolls and shoulder movements before standing, those symptoms, fortunately, disappeared. This demonstrates how something so ordinary and familiar can quietly drift into the category of a health risk without anyone noticing. Your first minutes after waking represent a crossroads where you either activate your circulation or you let stillness sabotage your health. A few seconds of gentle motion, such as flexing the toes or rotating the ankles, can be the difference between healthy flow and dangerous stagnation. If simply sitting still can cause this much potential harm, wait until you hear about the next habit that millions of older Americans do daily. Point number 3 involves rushing to the bathroom the very moment you stand up, which is a frequent occurrence for many seniors. Among my older patients across the United States, this is one of the most common and most misunderstood morning habits. Many seniors wake up with urgency due to nighttime urination, and the very first thing they do is stand up quickly and hurry to the bathroom. While it feels natural and necessary, for adults over 60, this simple action creates one of the most dangerous physiological shifts of the day. Let me explain what happens inside your body the moment your feet touch the floor after a night of rest. During the night, your blood pressure naturally drops, your heart rate slows, and your circulation becomes steady and quiet. When you suddenly move from a lying position to standing, your body must instantly compensate to maintain blood flow to the brain. Younger adults handle this shift without difficulty, but in older adults, the cardiovascular reflexes are weaker and the heart takes longer to stabilize. This creates a moment of orthostatic stress, which is a sudden drop in blood pressure as gravity pulls blood rapidly toward the legs. If you move too fast, the brain is left briefly undersupplied with oxygen, causing dizziness, blurred vision, and significant instability. When this moment of vulnerability is combined with the rush to the bathroom, the risks escalate sharply due to the straining involved. To urinate, especially after holding it overnight, your body engages the Valsalva maneuver, a reflex in which you momentarily increase pressure in the chest. This action strains the cardiovascular system and forces your heart and blood vessels to fight against increased internal pressure. For someone over 60, the combination of standing too fast and then straining creates a dangerous cascade inside the body. The sudden rise and fall of pressure can rupture fragile vessels or destabilize blood flow in areas already affected by aging plaque. Many early morning strokes occur in or near the bathroom, where these rapid shifts take place, because blood pressure fluctuates harshly. Stagnant blood in the legs combined with the internal strain of urination can encourage clot formation in vessels that struggle to maintain smooth flow. A clot that breaks free during this unstable period can travel upward and block a vessel in the brain within seconds. In seniors, the heart muscle may not respond quickly enough to sudden pressure changes, depriving the brain of oxygen when it needs stability. I recall a 76-year-old woman from Michigan who came to my clinic after experiencing 2 frightening blackouts each morning right after using the bathroom. She thought it was just age catching up, but when we reviewed her routine, the pattern was unmistakable. She jumped out of bed the moment her eyes opened, hurried to the bathroom, and strained, causing sharp drops followed by sudden spikes in pressure. She later learned she had suffered 2 tiny transient ischemic attacks, likely triggered by those abrupt morning transitions. This habit feels harmless because it is part of daily life. But for an older body, the first minute after waking requires respect. Your brain and heart need time to adjust before you expose them to strain. So slow down and pause before rising. If you think this bathroom habit is risky, wait until you see the next morning behavior which many older Americans follow. If you are still watching and finding these insights valuable, please comment with the number 1 below to let me know you are here. Now, let's keep going with point number 4, which is skipping breakfast or taking morning medications on an empty stomach. Among older adults in the United States, this habit has quietly become part of modern morning culture for many seniors. Many wake up, drink coffee, take their medications, and head into the morning with nothing in their stomach because they do not feel hungry. As a physician who has treated thousands of older Americans, I can tell you that starting the day without food is a significant stressor. Not eating in the morning doesn't just make you feel weak, but it changes your physiology in ways that can trigger strokes. During the night, your body burns through stored glucose to keep your brain functioning, and when you wake up, your brain expects replenishment. As we age, the liver becomes less efficient at releasing stored glucose, meaning older adults are far more vulnerable to morning hypoglycemia. This low blood sugar may not be dramatic enough to cause fainting, but it is enough to restrict the brain's access to fuel. The brain is the most sensitive organ in your body, has almost no ability to store energy, and needs a steady flow. When it doesn't get that supply, your blood pressure rises sharply because the body senses low blood sugar as a threat. In response, it releases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline to force glucose out of the bloodstream and tighten blood vessels. This hormonal surge can raise blood pressure to unsafe levels, making your blood more prone to clotting due to altered platelet activity. A small clot that forms in the morning, combined with dehydration and stiffness, can travel upward and block a vessel in the brain. This is why skipping breakfast is linked to a higher risk of ischemic stroke in seniors, as unstable circulation affects the brain. Furthermore, taking medications like blood pressure pills or anticoagulants on an empty stomach can make these drugs hit the bloodstream too quickly. This creates sudden drops in pressure or sharp fluctuations that destabilize circulation, as I observed in a 72-year-old patient from Florida. He believed he was being healthy by skipping breakfast, but he began experiencing confusion and shaky hands around 10 in the morning. We discovered he was dropping too low each morning, and taking medications on an empty stomach magnified the swings in his blood pressure. A scan later revealed he had suffered a small morning mini-stroke caused by the combination of low blood sugar, dehydration, and medication. Once he added a small morning meal like yogurt or a boiled egg, his symptoms disappeared completely. Breakfast for older adults is about stability and giving the brain the fuel it needs to protect itself from chaotic physiology. You do not need a large meal, but you must give your brain something to work with to avoid unnecessary risk. Now you need to be prepared for the next morning habit, one that millions of seniors see as harmless, yet places the brain under stress. Point number 5 is starting your day with stress by checking the news, emails, or social media too soon after waking. Of all the morning habits I see in older Americans, this one is quietly becoming the most destructive to the aging brain. It does not involve movement or diet, but rather early morning stress that floods the brain with stimulation before your feet touch the floor. To your aging nervous system, this is a shock and a sudden wave of psychological stress delivered at a vulnerable moment. The human body is wired to experience a natural cortisol surge in the early morning hours to help you wake up and regain alertness. This hormone peaks between 6 and 9 in the morning, and in older adults, this peak is often higher and lasts longer. Now imagine adding emotional stress on top of that physiological stress when your blood pressure is already rising and your blood is thicker. Your nervous system is still shifting from sleep mode, yet you suddenly introduce fear or frustration through a screen or a blaring TV. This combination creates a powerful spike in blood pressure and constricts already stiff blood vessels, increasing the workload on the heart immediately. Studies repeatedly show that strokes occur more often in the morning because the brain is caught in this exact storm of pressure. Stress makes blood stickier and platelets activate, which creates an environment where clots form more easily and can travel toward the brain. I treated a 72-year-old Vietnam veteran from Texas who used to start every day watching the news, admitting it agitated him. He experienced episodes of flashing lights in his vision, and his blood pressure log showed dramatic early morning surges reaching dangerous levels. When he stopped turning on the news first thing and instead spent 10 minutes breathing, the episodes vanished completely. This is a warning that your morning should not begin with stress or headlines, as the aging brain needs a buffer zone. Even 10 minutes of calm gives your circulatory system time to stabilize and your brain time to receive oxygenated blood. If something as simple as a news notification can injure an older brain, consider the next morning habit which carries a hidden danger. Point number 6 is ignoring morning blood pressure checks, which is a silent danger most seniors never see coming until it is too late. Often, patients tell me they only check their blood pressure when something feels wrong, but this approach causes me deep concern. For adults over 60, the most dangerous blood pressure surge happens quietly, invisibly, and predictably every single morning due to the dawn phenomenon. Cortisol rises sharply, adrenaline increases, and the cardiovascular system pushes blood harder to prepare you for the day ahead. In an older body, where arteries are stiffer and circulation is less flexible, this natural surge becomes risky and volatile. This is the single period of the day when blood pressure reaches its highest volatility, occurring before breakfast and before medications. Early morning hypertension is one of the strongest predictors of stroke, yet millions of seniors never think to measure it. When morning blood pressure spikes, fragile brain vessels that are often narrowed by age are suddenly hit with intense pressure. Even a small momentary surge can rupture a weakened vessel, which is why so many strokes happen between 6 and 11 in the morning. High morning pressure forces thick dehydrated blood through narrow vessels, increasing friction and encouraging clot formation that can push existing clots upward. If your pressure is already dangerously high before your medication takes effect, your brain is left unprotected during the most unstable period. Many older adults never experience major symptoms, but suffer tiny strokes in the small vessels of the brain that accumulate over years. I once cared for a 78-year-old man from Virginia who insisted his blood pressure was always fine because he checked it in the evenings. We asked him to measure it each morning, and the results showed morning surges as high as 180/95, despite normal evening readings. He confessed to brief episodes of vision blurring, which were tiny warnings from the brain that he had previously ignored. With adjustments to his schedule, those episodes stopped, proving that you cannot manage what you do not measure. Checking your morning pressure takes less than 60 seconds, but it can be the difference between a stable day and an irreversible event. If ignoring blood pressure puts you at risk, the next morning habit is even more dangerous and shockingly common among seniors. Point number 7 is spending the first hour of the morning sitting still, which creates a hidden circulatory crisis in older adults. Of all the morning habits I warn my older patients about, this final one is perhaps the most deceptively dangerous. It looks harmless and feels comfortable, but for adults over 60, spending that first hour sitting still is a powerful driver of stroke risk. When you wake up, your blood is naturally thicker, your muscles are stiff, and your blood pressure begins to rise. Movement is what helps the body adjust safely, but prolonged stillness traps the body in a state where poor circulation becomes dangerous. When you spend 30 to 60 minutes sitting in a chair, your calf muscles remain inactive and cannot pump blood back toward the heart. Your venous valves, which are already weakened with age, allow blood to pool in the legs where it sits stagnant and thickens. Meanwhile, your brain is demanding oxygen after hours of sleep, but the sluggish circulation struggles to deliver what it needs. Over time, this creates a buildup of slow-moving blood below and an undersupplied brain above, which is where the danger becomes alarming. The heart compensates by increasing pressure, which can rupture fragile areas of the brain or worsen an existing blockage in seniors with stiff arteries. Stagnant blood is clot-forming blood, and the longer it sits still in the veins, the easier it becomes for platelets to clump. I cared for a 74-year-old retired engineer from Colorado who sat quietly in his recliner for nearly an hour every morning. He began experiencing sudden spells of blurred vision and confusion, and scans revealed multiple tiny clots likely formed during morning stillness. When we changed his routine to include just 5 minutes of light movement, his symptoms stopped completely, proving the value of steady flow. Just 2 to 5 minutes of light mobility can cut your morning stroke risk dramatically, yet millions still begin their day in complete stillness. Now that you have seen all 7 habits, let us bring everything together, because the truth behind these risks reveals a critical pattern. Protecting your brain starts the moment you wake up, and my experience treating older adults confirms that the brain is harmed by small daily habits. During the first hour after waking, your blood is thicker and your circulation is fragile, making your brain vulnerable. The 7 morning habits we have uncovered are real physiological threats that slowly push the aging brain toward danger. Rushing your body, starving your brain, flooding your system with stress, and allowing stillness to harden into stagnation all affect blood flow. However, there is hope, because the same habits that harm you are the ones you can change with awareness and intention. Small adjustments like drinking water, moving gently, keeping a peaceful mind, and eating a small meal are true forms of medicine. The difference between a life altered by stroke and a life lived fully often comes down to choices made in quiet moments. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment with the number 1, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe.